start the recording. All right. Okay. So today we'll talk about some of the basics of functions. Okay. And I'm taking some of the stuff I'm taking straight from this from the textbook. You know, make sure you do your reading. And again, part of the reason why I picked this textbook is that the chapters are super short, so nobody has an excuse for not doing their reading. Whereas, you know, I get it. Other courses, you get like a huge chapter to read. You don't want to do that, so I understand. But the chapters are really short. Please do the reading. Let's take a look at functions, okay? So what are functions? Functions are little bits of code that will repeat a task, okay? And the rule of thumb, and maybe I'll add this, is that you know, as you write code, you're gonna find yourself repeating certain tasks. Okay, you're gonna find, like, you do something and you find that you're gonna have to do this more than one time. So what's tempting is you just take that piece of code and you copy, Control C, and then you Control V somewhere else. Okay, and you paste it. You make a couple changes and you run it again, and you're happy. And the kind of the rule of thumb. Oh, is the lecture not recording? Yeah, you are right. Thank you. No, it's recording. It's recording. Okay, so it is recording. All right. You copy and you paste, and you know, copy and paste once, that's fine. Copy and paste twice, okay? If you find yourself copying and pasting, so now you have basically 3 repetitions, the original and 2 copies, then you should really start thinking of writing a function. And by the time you're about to paste it a 3rd time, right? So you're going then at that point, you definitely need to change your code to a function. You don't want to be copying and pasting more than that, right? Because then you have basically the same code in 4 different locations, right? If you've copied and pasted it 3 times, you've got the same code, just slightly modified in 4 different locations. And at that point, it really needs to be a function, because if you make a change to one spot, then you're going to have to find and hunt that change in all 4 locations, and that's going to be a pain. Whereas if it's a function, then you only need to change the function once, and it's going to modify in all the locations. Okay. Anyway, function calls. That's how we execute a function, right? So we call a function, and that's how the function runs. A function call consists of the name of the function along with parentheses, okay, and then any arguments inside the parentheses. And then sometimes a function will have a return value, right? So here, the function is type. Okay, the name is type. The argument is 42. It goes inside the parentheses. And then this function returns a value, int. Okay, and we know it's a return value because at least in IPython, you've got an in and you've got an out. All right. So here, I type in the function name print, but I didn't put any parentheses there, right? So if you leave off the parentheses, that doesn't actually call the function. This just says, hey, you're talking about the function print, okay? And that's what we get there, okay? Here, I call the function print, and I put in quotes hello, and it prints out hello to the screen. This function has no returned value. There's no return value. There's no out here. It outputs stuff to the screen, but it's not a return value. I can't make use of it later, okay? Here, I'm printing basically a tuple of numbers, 1, 2, and 3, and it outputs to the screen here. But it just outputs the numbers. Again, no return value. You know, print comes with some optional arguments here, and so one of the optional arguments for the function is a separator, and it's gonna, here I put the dash and it separates them 1-2-3. Okay. Okay. Anytime you want to learn about some kind of function, you can always type in help and the name of the function, or you can put question, function name. I think this is almost, I think it's identical to the way you ask for help in R. And so, so you can do that. In Jupyter, if you do help parentheses print, it's going to output, it's going to print out the help onto, onto the screen. Whereas if you do the question mark print, it's going to bring up a little pop-up window inside Jupyter Notebook. If you do a, if you guys are following. Oh, I guess to follow along, you can run git, right? You can do git fetch upstream, git merge upstream master, git push, and then that will get your local repository in sync with my remote repository, and then you can start up Jupyter Notebook and open up the notebook yourself. Okay, so if you wanted to, you can execute any of these things. Execute question mark print, and it brings up a little pop-up. Okay, it brings up a little pop-up. I don't need to actually, what do you call it, show you how to do the git fetch, right? I've already done this, I think, twice already. So I'm hoping by now you can do git fetch upstream, git merge upstream master, git push, and get your local repository in sync. Okay, and I think most of you are set up. When I checked my GitHub, you know, most of you have forked my remote repository. A few of you haven't. It's not a, I don't have all 67 or 70 of you up there, but most of you have done it. So that's good. Okay, if you want to follow along with the lecture content. All right, if you want to define a new function, this is what we do. Okay, you just you type in define. Okay, DEF defines a new function, and then you type in the name of the function, parentheses, and then the name of the arguments. Okay, I guess they're going to be parameters, parameter or argument names that you want, and then a colon, right? And the way Python works is that when it comes after the colon, the lines that are indented are associated with the function, okay? And then as soon as you stop the indentation, then it's no longer associated, okay? So there's no curly braces, okay? So Python doesn't use curly braces. It uses indentation, okay? And then if you want the function to return something, you have to use the keyword return, okay? Otherwise, it's not going to return a value. It'll return none. So let me just, so here, I'm going to define a function. Can you use curly braces for clarity, or will that make things not work? Yeah, I don't think you can use curly braces. Okay, you will. Don't worry. You feel like you want curly braces because you're accustomed to curly braces, but after you read Python code, okay, you're gonna get used to this indentation business. All right, you're gonna get used to it, and then when you read our code with bad indentation, okay, you're gonna be annoyed. Because R doesn't require indentation, right? You just need curly braces, and then you know, it's good habit to have good indentation, but it doesn't require it, and so you'll be annoyed when you read other languages and they have bad indentation. So Python demands good indentation because that's how the code works, and so so that's what you have. Yeah, so there's no curly braces. Okay, so you're gonna have it like this: a colon. And then everything that's indented is associated with the function definition. And then if I stopped indenting, it won't. Okay, so anyway, what this does, and I haven't talked about this attribute, but if you take in a string, okay, a string, you can do dot upper, and it's going to give you the uppercase version of that string, okay? And then I think we've already shown you how you can use the plus sign with a string and it will concatenate. All right, so anyway, here it takes in an argument phrase, and whatever that is, that becomes, you know, whatever thing comes in here is going to take the uppercase attribute, so the uppercase version of that phrase, whatever comes in, and tacks on 3 exclamation points, right? And that's going to be assigned to the value shout, and then the function returns whatever shout is, okay? So here it goes. So if I run shouting and I just type in, hi, my name is Miles, it comes back and it shouts, hi, my name is Miles with exclamation point. It's funny how I don't know, at least in my brain, this really feels like someone's shouting here. And so it's coming in all caps with 3 exclamation points. It sounds like I'm really excited about life, which I am. So anyway, there we go. If you try running this, okay, you do shouting on the number 5 though, oh, it gives you an error, okay? It says attribute error, okay? And it says, look, this is what I tried to do, shouting 5. This is the command you executed, shouting 5. And inside shouting, look at this. This is where we ran into an error, okay? So one thing, Python is great. Its error messages are so nice. Let me see. There's a meme about Python error meme. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay. This is it. Okay. I don't know if you guys can see this. Can you see this? This is so true. Python error messages, right? So here's Gordon Ramsay. Kid is crying. Oh dear, gorgeous. C++ error message. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't be throwing curse words around on our lecture notes, but this is other languages error messages, not nice, but Python, so nice, so nice. It's true, okay? So, so here, you know, Python just says, hey, you know what? Int object has no attribute upper. Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, so I can't do this, right? So I need to, I can't do it with the int. So, oh, you know what? Like, let me give you an even better example of how nice the Python error messages are. Like if I just try to say print hello, oh, this is going to be part of your homework assignment anyway. When you run this, look at this. It says syntax error, missing parentheses and call to print. Did you mean print with parentheses, hello? Yes, that's what I meant, Python. How'd you know? Okay. Anyway, this is what we have. All right. So you can't make the number 5 uppercase, okay, because it's an integer. So so what we can do is there's another function called str, and str, what it attempts to do is it tries to take whatever input you have. So here I took phrase, and whatever input this is, it's going to try to convert it to a string, okay? So it converts it to a string, and then we can call uppercase on it, and now it's going to work, okay? So here it converts the integer 5 into a string 5. String 5, the character 5 uppercase is still just the number 5, and then it adds exclamation points, and it still feels like we're shouting the number 5 here. So can either double quote or single quote be used to denote strings? Yes, either a single or double quote can be used to denote strings, and I use them interchangeably. So the thing is if you want to have a word with an apostrophe in it, then you'll probably want to use double quotes. So for example, if we wanted, so if I wanted to write print, I can't believe it, okay? All right, so that will work. Whereas if I used single quotes, you know, this is going to cause a problem, right? Because the single quote closes this off, so that's going to cause an issue. if you wanted to use single quotes, it's possible to do it. You just have to escape the single quote here, okay? Oh, wait. Oh, no, okay, there we go. Okay, and so this works. If you wanted to use single quotes, you can have an apostrophe inside your text, but it has to be escaped with a backslash. So that's what, that's kind of a reason why you'd use double quote versus single quote. And you know what? I don't even know what's going to happen here. Let me try this. What if I did this? Yeah, okay, no, that doesn't quite work. So if you use single quotes and you try to get around it by using a double quote, then it looks like you are writing funny. Okay. So yes, single or double quotes work. The advantage of double quotes is you can put in apostrophes, whereas with single quotes, you got to escape them. Okay. All right, so back here. Okay, and these are all values being returned because return shout, and so this is a value that's being returned, okay? All right, so if a function returns a value, then the result of the function can be assigned to an object, all right? So, so here, again, here's my, my function that we've defined called shouting. And so here we're gonna take hi, shouting hi, and we're gonna assign it to greeting. And so later on, I can take greeting, and when I ask for what's the value of greeting, it's there, okay? Greeting is a string, capital H-I, exclamation point. There we go, okay? So if the function returns something, you can assign it somewhere, and it shows up here, okay? On the other hand, if the function doesn't use return, oops, sorry, and there's no parentheses. There's no parentheses here. If you don't use the keyword return, the result of the function will be none, okay? So here I've defined some function called quiet, okay? And basically it's kind of the same thing, except we're gonna do dot lower for the lowercase. And you know, if we were doing R, this might be okay. R automatically returns the last line of the function, but that's not the case with Python. With Python, if you don't explicitly say return, and sorry, there's no parentheses here. If you don't use the keyword return here, it doesn't return anything. So if I tried to do this, right? If I take quiet and I put in the string hello, and I assign the result to whisper, then what happens, okay? Whisper is actually none, and print whisper will return shows none, okay? And if you ask for the type of whisper, it returns none type. Let me actually show you. Get rid of these parentheses here. And up here, if I just typed in whisper, okay? So here we're going to define this. If I execute this thing, what happens is it looks like nothing has happened, okay? It's not returning, it's just when you say what's inside none type, the none is actually like, it doesn't return anything from the cell, okay? If you print it out, it's gonna say it's none, and then, you know, the type is the none type. So this is basically the equivalent of the null object. It's known as the none type, or the none in Python. So there's nothing there. There's nothing returned from this function, okay? So this function, it executes this code, but it doesn't return a value. It has no side effects either, right? So other functions, like if within the function I print things, it at least has the side effect of outputting stuff onto the screen, okay? So, you know, print has the side effect of outputting something onto the screen, even though print itself returns none, right? So print itself returns none, but it does have the side effect of outputting something onto the screen. Okay, so going beyond what the textbook says, while we're on the subject of returning values, Python has this nice feature where you can actually return multiple values. All right. So, in R, when you wrote a function, those functions could only return one value. You could only return one value. And if you wanted to return multiple values, you had to combine them together either into a list or a vector or some single object, okay? With Python, you can actually return multiple values. Multiple values get returned as something called a tuple. We will talk about what a tuple is in greater detail later, but just right now, it's called a tuple, and for now, it can be used to return multiple values, right? So here I'm going to define a function called powers of, and you put a number in there, and it's going to return three values: number, square, and cube. Okay, square is going to be the number raised to the second power, and cube is going to be the number raised to the third power. Okay, and so we're going to say define powers of, return number, comma, square, comma, cube. And so it's going to return all three of these values as what's known as a tuple. Okay, so you say powers of 3, and it returns 3, 9, 27, which is quite nice. Okay, and so the nice thing about a tuple is there's something called tuple unpacking. Okay, so you can take powers of 3, which earlier we said is this tuple 3, 9, 27, and you can assign it basically to this tuple x, y, and z. Okay, and that's going to assign each of those values. 3, 9, 27 gets assigned to x, y, and z respectively. All right, so I can say, well, what's x? X is 3. What's y and what's z? Those are both 9 and 27. And these are all of these values, the powers of 3, those three values, 3, 9, 27, got unpacked into x, y, and z, which is a really nice, nice feature of Python, okay? Because if you wanted to do something similar to in R, you'd have to have the thing return as a list, and then you'd have to write separate lines for each thing, where it's going to say like, I don't know, you run LM and you get a model, and you'd have to do like model $ coefficients is coefficients square bracket 1 is B0, and model coefficient square bracket 2 is B1 or something. You'd have to unpack them separately. Here you can just unpack them in one line. It's really nice. Do you always have to know how many elements the tuple contains to do this? Yes, you do. You have to know how many elements the tuple will contain in order to do that. So I have an example showing this. So you got to know your function and what it's going to return here. So you can capture the tuple as a single object. Okay. So you can take, you can also just take all of this and assign it to J, and you'll get 4, 16, 64, and that J will be a single object. And you can reference each of these values using zero indexing. So Python uses zero indexing, so you can access the first element by using a square bracket with a 0 inside. Okay. So I can say J square bracket 0, and that's going to give me the 4. J square bracket 1 will give me a 16. J square bracket 2 will give me 64. Okay. So you can, get values back this way, all right? And you can reference objects inside the tuple this way. If you try to unpack it into the wrong number, right? So here, the powers of function returns has 3 values to unpack, and we only gave it 2. Okay, a spot for 2 places to unpack. So it gives me an error, right? And again, Python's error message, very clear and helpful. It says too many values to unpack. We expected 2. In this line, we expected only 2 values to unpack, but then when I ran powers of on 5, I got 3 values back, and there were too many values to unpack. There is a feature in Python where you can have arguments of variable length, but yeah, it doesn't work for I'm trying to think, does it work for tuple unpacking? And I don't think so. So yeah, you need to know how many values to unpack here in the tuple. Okay, is that all right? Okay. This is a chunk of text that I took directly from the textbook, and it's on flow of execution. And so as you write your scripts, as you write your cells in your notebook, one thing to keep in mind is that when you define a function, none of the lines inside the function definition actually get run, okay? So in the function definition, when you define it, none of those lines actually get run. Oh, what's the first quiz question? Good. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. First quiz question, the letter D as in dog. First quiz question, letter D as in dog, okay? Okay, so when you write a function, when you define a function, none of those lines get executed. It's only until, so the function, those lines only get executed when the function is called. So you can write some line that is complete garbage, should result in an error, and Python doesn't care if it's inside a function definition. It's only going to care if that function gets called. Okay, so when you try to execute some function and that function has garbage lines that will result in errors, that's when Python will throw the error. But during the function definition, it's not going to care. It's not going to care. Okay. And unless there's a syntax error where it confuses Python and it can't figure out even what the definition of the function is. Okay, but you can easily do some kind of you can call for variables that don't exist or things like that inside a function, and it's not going to mind during the definition of the function. Okay. So that's what we have there. Okay. All right. Parameters and arguments. Inside a function, the arguments of a function are assigned to variables called parameters, right? So here's a function. It's called print twice, and all it does is it takes whatever argument, the argument gets assigned to the parameter Bruce, okay? And this, I'm just taking this from the textbook, okay? The argument gets assigned to the parameter Bruce, and then it's going to print whatever Bruce is. It's going to print it once, and then it's going to print it again. So here, I call print twice, and I provide it the argument spam. The argument takes on the value spam. Spam gets assigned to the parameter Bruce, and it's going to print spam once, and then it's going to print spam again, and this is the output there. So no surprise, okay? Whatever you put inside here could be the result of another function. And so here, I import math, and I run math sign on math pi over 2, okay? The sine function applied to pi over 2 is 1, okay? So the result of that function, okay, so this function returns a value 1.0, and it's going to print that out. Print twice, it's going to print 1.0, 1.0. Okay, here I've got spam times 2, spam space times 2, so that's going to be a character string, and it prints it twice, and it does this. Okay, all right. Can someone explain what happened here? So I did print twice spam, and it gives me spam, spam, none, none. Why didn't I get spam written 4 times? Okay, yeah, nothing's being returned, just printed to the screen. So print twice returns nothing. It has a side effect. It has a side effect of printing spam twice onto the screen, okay? So it doesn't return a value, but it has the side effect of just outputting something to the screen, okay? But as far as what's being returned, the thing that gets returned is none. So this gets executed first, right? So when you run functions nested inside of each other, it's going to run the innermost thing first, okay? So it's going to run this, which has the side effect of outputting spam to the screen twice. But this function returns none, and so now it's basically running print twice on none. And that's going to print output none, have the side effect of outputting none to the screen twice. Okay, is that good? All right. As you define your functions, okay, it is possible to specify default arguments, okay? If you anticipate it's possible that they're not going to be explicitly provided, right? So here's a function, okay? We define a function called stuff. It takes on 3 values, 3 arguments, A, B, and C, okay? And this function returns print A, B, C. All right, simple enough. Okay, so we say stuff 1, 2, 3, and it prints out 1, 2, 3 onto the screen. So no surprise there, okay? Here, I try calling stuff, and I give it only 2 arguments, 1 and 2, right? And Python says, there's an error here. Stuff, the function stuff here, is missing 1 required argument, C. You didn't give it an argument for C, so it can't run, okay? And so to avoid that, what we can do is we can define the function with default arguments. So here we're going to define the function junk, and we give it each argument here, A, B, and C, has a default value. A takes on 1, 2, and 3. And so if I call junk with nothing inside, it still executes, okay? It assumes 1, 2, and 3, and it's going to output that. If you just give it only 1 argument, okay, then Python will assign it to the first argument, A in this case, and then it uses the default values for the remaining ones. Or you can specify, I'm going to say B equals 4, and then it assigns 4 to argument B and returns 1, 4, 3, or prints out 1, 4, 3, I should say, using the default values for the other things, okay? And then if you give it 3 arguments, then it assigns it appropriately to A, B, and C. All right, but if you do something like this, okay, Python gets confused, okay? If you only name some of the arguments, Python is going to get confused. So here, it reads left to right. So it says, okay, here's the function junk, okay, and the first argument is 5, and Python says, all right, we're going to assign that to argument A. And then it sees A equals 10, and it says, wait a second, now I'm confused. Now I'm confused because junk got multiple values for argument A, and it throws an error here, okay? So anyway, that's how multiple arguments work, okay? But you can provide the arguments in some other order, right? So here you can do C, 5, A, 10, B, 0, and Python has no problem because the arguments line up correctly. All right. Parameters and values for a function are local, okay? Meaning that these arguments, these values, variables, they exist only inside the function, and as soon as the function finishes running, those values get destroyed, okay? So here I've defined the function print twice using Bruce, and then we define another function called cat twice, okay? Cat twice takes 2 parts, part 1 and part 2, and it's going to concatenate them, okay? It's going to concatenate them using the plus, okay? And then it calls print twice on cat. All right, so here we've got line 1, bing tittle, and then line 2, tittle bang, okay? And these are just lines taken from the textbook. This is an example here, okay? And so when we call cat twice, what it's going to do is it's going to concatenate these 2 lines together into bing tittle tittle bang, and then it calls print twice using this, and it prints that line twice. Okay, so no surprise there. No surprise there. But this, remember, so it's calling cat here. So as soon as cat is done, which currently has this value, as soon as this cat twice function is done, that value goes away. So if you tried to later on say, hey, what was cat? This is undefined, okay? And if you say, well, what was Bruce that you used? Also, that is also not defined. So neither of these things are defined in the kind of global environment here, because they exist only inside the function. This talks about stack diagrams, but inside your notes or inside the textbook, there's a, do I have it here somewhere? There's a stack diagram showing kind of the scopes of each thing and the values inside, okay? And so the function print twice was called by cat twice. Cat twice was called inside what's known as main, okay? Or in our case, it'll be the module for in our Jupyter notebook, okay? And so each of the values only exist inside their own kind of inside their own little scope, okay? Inside their own frame here, right? And so what Python will do is if there's an error, it's gonna clearly just show you kind of where the error took place, and it'll show you kind of the sequence of events that happened here, okay? So again, here is, so here I've redefined print twice just to say print cat, okay? And this didn't execute correctly here. Okay, so I've defined print twice to just show print cat. And then when I run cat twice on here, it's going to put part 1 and part 2 together, and then it's going to call print twice. And so inside this function, and when I try to print cat, this is not defined. It's not defined inside this function, because inside this function we have Bruce and no reference to cat. And cat is not a variable that exists kind of anywhere in the environment here. And so it's going to return in our traceback of the errors, it's going to show us where things went wrong, okay? Because cat is only defined inside this function where I do cat twice. So here it says, all right, this is what you tried, right? The error happened at this line. So when we ran the function, no problem at line 1, no problem at line 2, line 3, this is where the error happened. Cat twice, line 1, line 2. Okay, so Python says, okay, let's look inside cat twice, part 1, part 2. Okay, inside there, no problem, no problem. This is where the error happened when we called print underscore twice on cat, okay? And when we called print underscore cat on twice, let's look inside this function, print twice Bruce. Inside print twice Bruce, the error happens at this line, print cat, okay? So an important thing as far as debugging goes is your ability to read Python error messages, okay? Reading error messages, understanding how to fix the problem. And luckily for us, Python, I think, is very clear, it gives very good error messages. And so here it shows you exactly which line is causing the trigger, causing the error. And it's right here when it says print cat, the error that we're getting is cat is not defined, okay? And then when you look at this, you go, oh yeah, I didn't define cat anywhere inside of this function. So what I need to do is I need to reference a variable that does exist inside the function called Bruce. Okay, just kind of going along with this whole idea of variable scopes and that the values are local only. Okay, it's important to note that values assignment operations inside a function only affect the values inside the function, okay? And they don't interact with values outside the function. So here in the global environment, I define x to take on the value 5. I assign the value 5 to the variable x, okay? And so when I call x in the global environment, it says, yeah, that's 5. I'm going to define a function called alter x, okay? We're going to change x. And what this will do is it's going to add 1 to x and store it as x, and it's going to return that value, okay? So we're going to take whatever x is, we add 1 to it, it assigns it back to x, and we're going to return this new value of x, okay? So I say alter x, okay, and I call on x, which is currently 5, and it says, hey, I've done that. 5 plus 1 gets assigned to x. X is 6. We return 6, and return x, and x has the value 6, so return 6 here, okay? But again, this x inside the function here has nothing to do with the x outside, okay? So the x outside, when I call in the global environment, I say, hey, what's the value of x? It still says it's the number 5. So, so this is all just part of the environment rules, scoping environment rules, as far as you know, local values and global values. Okay. If you wanted to, you can. Python does allow you to have your functions to interact with values in the global environment, and you use the keyword global. Okay, global variables. So here. We can use the keyword global. Be careful, be careful. I always hesitate to introduce this. I always hesitate a little bit to introduce this. But it's possible to use global and non-local variables, okay? In one of your future data camp assignments, you'll mess with global and non-local variables and stuff. But anyway, here we go. We can define a function called alter the global x. And what you say is, you know what, I want to use global x, okay? I want to use the x variable in the global environment, okay? And so notice I no longer pass x inside as an argument here, okay? If I passed x as an argument here, it would actually create confusion to Python, because it would see kind of this local parameter value called x, and it says, hey, there's a global x, and Python gets confused and it says, well, which x are you talking about? So I would no longer pass an argument, a parameter called x. I just say, hey, use the x that's in the global environment. That when I talk about x, that's the only x I'm talking about. Okay, if I went back to here and I had this, then Python would be confused. It would say, well, are you talking about the parameter x that you defined in the arguments, or are you talking about the global x variable that you said here? Okay, so here I'm not passing x into here. I'm just saying, when I talk about x, I'm talking about the global x, all right? And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take x, we're gonna add 1 to it, and we're gonna store it back to x, okay? And then we're gonna return x, okay? Can we assign global variables as function parameters? No, you would not do it in here. So when you do it inside the function parameters, those are going to be all local variables. Yeah. So if you want global things, it happens inside the function definition, and you don't have them within your function parameter list, okay? Okay, so we're gonna do global x, and then we return x. And so here we have x equals 5. I call alter global x. All right, it returns the value 6. X takes on the value 6. And then when we ask in the global environment, what's the value of x? It tells us x has the value 6. Okay, so the value in 6. Yeah. Okay, if you referred to x before the command global x, does that refer to the argument? In other words, does global x only apply to the commands that come after? Oh, that's a good question. All right, let's see. Well, okay, so here if I say print x here, okay, this will just use kind of the scoping rules of it's going to search for a value of X outside the scope. So I think this will work fine. Oh no, okay. No, it doesn't. It says name X is used prior to global declaration. Okay, so Python says you're not allowed to do that. Okay, so that answers our question right there. Okay, so if you try to, yeah, oh yeah, that's right. If you try to use, if you're gonna call global X somewhere inside your function, you're not allowed to use X before you call global X. Okay, so it kicks that. Okay, I think I can define. We'll call it search for X. All right, and it's just going to say print, yeah, print X and return X. Okay, and this will just do search for X. Oops, I just have it here. Okay, and so here, even though X is not defined anywhere inside of the function things, Python searches the global environment for X. So if you give it a variable name that is not defined inside the function, Python will search the higher scopes, okay, until it finds it. Okay, second homework, or not second homework, second quiz question for today is A as in apple. A as in apple for the second quiz question. So that's that. That fabled homework assignment is being written, and I will post it, so you can expect to see that. And I'll probably give you guys a week to work on it. But that'll be it for today. Have a good weekend, and stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you guys on Monday.